How you guys doing? Hope you're enjoying this Memorial Day. I know it is a people free to the work. Obviously, if you don't get it done today, that's all right. Okay, because no, normally we wouldn't be in school today. All right. I know that my connection isn't great right now on here, so if that shows up when the video is posted, I apologize. Feel free to ask questions, though. All right. And as always, if you have questions as we go through the work today, feel free to post them right now, and I will get to them as best I can. We're going to continue going through Reconstruction. A second Reconstruction packet was posted on your Google Classrooms this morning. Okay, so please have that with you if you are watching the video. We're going to start by going through the Reconstruction timeline. That's the first page. Okay. And most of this stuff we've been going over a little bit the past week, so the timeline is going to be a little bit more of a review, okay, but also looking in some more specific events as well before we get to some of the newer material in our first primary source. Okay, so going through the document, the timeline. In 1865, Civil War is going to end. Okay, you guys should remember that from a few weeks ago. President Abraham Lincoln, who remember was a Republican, is assassinated, and Democratic President Andrew Johnson, okay, is going to take over, right? He was vice president. He becomes the president. Okay. This is also the year that the 13th Amendment to the Constitution passes. Okay, and we're going to take a look at a few amendments today in Document A, okay, our first primary source. Okay. Congress is also going to create the Freedmen's Bureau to help freedmen and women transition from slavery into a new life where they're now have more freedom. Okay, slavery is being abolished. Okay, so that's all in 1865. Lots going on. In 1866, we're going to see the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which is going to allow African Americans to own property and to be treated equally in court. Okay, so that is the goal of this law. That same year, though, we're going to see the Ku Klux Klan being founded. Okay, the KKK is going to emerge as an organization. Okay, and we will be going into more detail with that. I believe next week we're going to take a closer look at the KKK and its beginnings. Okay. In 1867, radical Republicans are going to take over the United States government. Okay, and we talked a little bit about radical Republicans last week. Okay, looking at particular at Thaddeus Stevens. Okay, who was the leader of the radical Republicans in the House of Representatives. Okay, recall that when we say radical, it just means that they're trying to institute drastic changes to the country at this time. Okay, radical is not saying good, it's not saying bad, but they are trying to remake what the country looks like at this time. Okay, so that means how the South is being reintegrated into the country, as well as how African Americans, most of whom used to be slaves, are going to be integrated into U.S. society. Okay, so they are mostly in charge of the United States government at this time, by 1867. In 1868, the 14th Amendment to the Constitution passes. Okay, and again, we'll be taking a look at that today in closer detail. And the first African American ever is elected to the United States Congress. Okay, here in 1868. Okay, very big deal. In 1869, Ulysses S. Grant is going to be elected president. And remember, he is the Union general, or the Northern general, at the end of the Civil War. He's the one that helps the North win. Okay, he is the main general, and he is going to become president now. Yeah, and he's going to end up serving 2 terms. In 1870, the 15th Amendment to the Constitution passes. Okay, and that's going to be the last amendment that we're going to take a look at today. In 1871, Congress is going to pass the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871 in response to reports of widespread violence in the South. Okay, so the North is going to try and do something, okay, to stop the influence of the KKK in the South, okay, because they're hearing about the violence that is going on down there. All right, and once again, we'll be taking a closer look at the KKK next week. In 1872, the Freedmen's Bureau is going to end. Okay, the government cancels the Freedmen's Bureau. And remember, this is an institution that was created to help support newly freed African Americans, okay, get going, provide education, job training, things like that. Okay, so only 7 years of existence. Okay, right? It was created in 65. It ends in 72. Okay, so that's not a long time. 1874, Democrats are going to take control of the United States Congress. Okay, radical Republicans are no longer in power. Remember, Democrats are the majority party in the South. Okay, which again were the slaveholding states. Okay, these were the states that had seceded during the Civil War. Okay, and so we're seeing the radical Republicans who want to change society getting replaced in Congress by Democrats, okay, who more or less, okay, and again, it depends on the individual, okay, but are much more in favor of keeping society more or less the same at this point, kind of returning to the way things were. That doesn't mean reinstituting slavery in its entirety, but we are going to see throughout the week, okay, ways of making sure that society doesn't change too much. Okay, so these tend to be more conservative in thought. And in 1877, Rutherford B. Hayes is going to be elected president, and he officially ends Reconstruction. Okay, so Hayes is going to pull out all the remaining northern troops out of the southern states. Now, a large part of the Union Army, right, the Northern Army, had stayed in the South through Reconstruction. Okay, and we'll talk about it a little bit throughout this week and next week about how their job was really to work with the transition, okay, allowing southern states back into the country, right, and making sure that that transition went smoothly, as well as protecting African Americans and their rights as they are integrated into U.S. society. Okay, so Hayes is going to end Reconstruction. All those troops, okay, or most of them anyway, are going to be pulled out. Okay, the vast majority. Okay, and so the South is really kind of left on its own after this. Okay, and we're going to see what happens with that. Okay, and how some things that we're moving forward are going to move backwards. Okay, and how this is going to affect people overall. Okay. Any questions on our timeline? Okay, before we move into our amendments for the day. Okay, so we're going to move into our amendments then. So document A in your packet. Okay, and this is going to be the last document we're going to go over today. Okay, and we'll move on to a new one tomorrow. Okay, so we started looking at the Constitution way back in December. Okay, and we learned about the first 10 amendments, which make up the Bill of Rights. Now, between the Constitution, right, the birth of the Constitution in 1787, right, and this time period during the Civil War, we've only had 2 amendments get added. Okay, the 11th and the 12th amendments. Okay, so there have not been drastic changes to the Constitution in almost 100 years. Now, within just a few years, at the end of the Civil War, we're going to get 3 new amendments. Okay, and we're going to talk about those today. And remember, amendments are anything that kind of changes. It's an adjustment to the Constitution. Okay, and the Founding Fathers set up our Constitution so that it can be changed. Right, this isn't something that they didn't anticipate. They said when they created this, we don't know everything. We need to allow the Constitution to change to keep up with the changing world. Okay, when things change in the world, we need to be able to change the government, right? And it needs to be flexible enough to make sure that that can happen, and not so flexible, right? It is challenging to make an amendment, right? Because they don't want it to just be flip-flopping all over the place, right? So it needs to be able to change, but shouldn't just change for anything, okay? So that's their idea. So we're going to take a look at these 3 amendments today. Now, the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments to the U.S. Constitution are sometimes called the Reconstruction Amendments, okay, because they're passed during this time. Okay, and they're passed in order to abolish slavery and in order to establish the rights of those former slaves. Okay, so that's kind of their purpose. The 13th Amendment is passed in 1865, so right at the end of the Civil War. And part of what it says, right, in Section 1, it says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Okay, and if we look at our vocab at the bottom, jurisdiction means legal control. Okay. So not just within the United States, but anywhere that the United States legally controls, you cannot have slavery or involuntary servitude. So involuntary means you don't volunteer for it, right? It's forced upon you. And servitude, right, is to serve. Okay. So any type of slavery, right, is illegal in the United States or anywhere that the United States controls legally. Okay. Any place that they have jurisdiction. However, okay, in this amendment, it gives itself a loophole, right? It says except as punishment for a crime. Okay. Now, when it takes that into consideration, right, when it says except as punishment for a crime, it says that the person, right, the party needs to have been convicted. Okay, duly convicted. So that means that it needs to have gone through the legal process. Okay, and we talked about that when we were looking at the Bill of Rights, right? The different rights that you have when you're being put on trial, right? Being able to know what you're being charged with. Okay, punishment must fit the crime. All those kind of things. But even as the United States looks to end slavery, it gives itself a loophole to keep it going in some respects. Okay, and we see this throughout history, from this time in 1865 to today. We see different groups of people being charged with crimes and then being put into slavery or slavery-like conditions. Okay, involuntary servitude. Okay, where people are being forced to work in prison. Okay, and certain groups of people being imprisoned more than others. Okay, and we're going to take a look at that, particularly with black codes later this week, okay, as well as Jim Crow laws. Okay, so where the country as a whole, right, the system is being set up in order to keep slavery alive, but by different names. Okay, so it's ending slavery officially, but it is allowing it to continue in other forms. Okay, so this is very important, right? And it's very, very difficult, right? Because we say, right, slavery's ended over 100 years ago. Why are we still talking about it? Okay, but it's continued through society in different ways. Okay, and we can look at different segments of the population that are more likely to be put in jail, more likely to be put in prison, where they are allowed, right, by law, according to the amendment. Okay, they can be forced into slavery or involuntary servitude, right? That's what the amendment says. So if you guys have Netflix, actually, I'm not even sure if it's still on Netflix, but the documentary, The 13th, okay, talks about the 13th Amendment and its relationship to the prison system in the United States today. So I encourage you guys to check that out if you do have access to that. Okay. So that's the 13th Amendment, okay? Its job is to abolish slavery, but, okay, it does provide that loophole. The 14th Amendment is established in 1868. Okay, and what it says is in Section 1, all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Okay, so a couple vocab words there. Naturalized, okay, means that you're made a citizen, right? So if you're born in the United States, automatically a citizen. Okay, if you're naturalized, that's you became a citizen, okay, after coming here. Okay, abridge is to limit. Okay, so if you are a citizen of the United States, whether you were born here or whether you become a citizen later, no state can make or enforce any kind of law that is going to limit the privileges, or immunities means rights. Okay, so it cannot limit your privileges or your rights as a citizen of the United States. Okay, and that includes no state can deprive you, can keep you from life, liberty, or property, okay, without due process of law. Okay, and so anybody anybody under its jurisdiction, anybody within the legal control of the United States is supposed to have equal protection of the laws. Okay, that last line there, equal protection under the law. Okay, that means, okay, and particularly in this case, it's talking about African Americans have just as much rights under the law, okay, and are equally protected under the law as are white citizens, right? And it applies to everyone. Okay, that's what it's talking about specifically here, right? It's referring much more so to the newly freed African Americans, but it doesn't say anything about race, right? It's all people, all persons that are citizens of the United States, okay, have equal protection under the law. Okay, the law is not supposed to favor one person over another. Okay, the law applies to everyone equally. Okay, and we've seen this already when we were talking about the Constitution, right? In how it's trying to prevent any people from being higher or lower on in the social hierarchy. Okay, and that the law is supposed to apply to everyone. And we looked at that even when we were looking back at the foundations of United States law back in England. Okay, looking at things like the Magna Carta. Okay. Right. So again, this idea, okay, and it's putting it straight into the Constitution now that all citizens, okay, it doesn't matter who you are, need to have equal protection under the law. Okay. So that's what this one's saying. And finally, the 15th Amendment, okay, which is established in 1870, first section of which says that the rights of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Okay? So your right to vote, okay, suffrage, right, which is the right to vote, cannot be denied, okay, cannot be taken away, and it cannot be limited by the United States government or by any state because of what race you are, what color you were, okay, or, right, previous condition of servitude. So whether you used to be a slave or not, okay, that stuff has no effect on whether you should be allowed to vote, right? So this amendment is the one giving African Americans the right to vote. Okay, so all citizens shall have the right to vote. Now, if you'll notice, right, it says race, color, previous condition of servitude. It does not say anything about sex. Women do not have the right to vote yet. Okay, women are not going to get the right to vote until the 1900s. Okay, this amendment, okay, is giving African American men the right to vote. Okay, and that's what's going on here. Okay, now this becomes part of the Constitution. Okay, and just like we've seen with some of the other ones, this does not always play out. Just because it's the law doesn't mean that that's the way it always works. Okay, and we're going to see different ways in which different peoples, okay, specifically African Americans in the cases that we'll be looking at right now during this time period, okay, are going to be prevented from voting. Okay, and it's something that we still see today. We see voter suppression with different groups of people having different obstacles put in front of them in order to be able to exercise their right as a citizen to vote. And it's something that's been going on since this time, right? Okay, so it says that everyone has the right to vote, okay? And we're going to see that that's the law. That is not always the way that it works, okay? And so you have to, right, stand up and you have to keep fighting for those rights, right? It's not enough that it's written down. You need to make sure you know your rights and you know how to fight for them, right? Because if you don't know them, people will try and take them away, okay? So just like with equal protection under the law, right? We don't always see that happening. That is the law, though, right? That is in the Constitution, right? So we need to be mindful and take care to make sure that we know our rights and that we're supporting our rights as well as the rights of other people that we know, right? Helping make sure everyone has these, right? And that they're supported. Okay. So that is what we're going to go over today. Okay, those 3 Reconstruction amendments. Tomorrow we're going to take a look at the Black Codes. Okay, and again, talking about this Reconstruction time period. This whole packet, okay, completed. Okay, all the guided questions at the end. Okay, there's no CR paragraph this time, but there are questions. Okay, so all those guided questions There are, let's see, there are 13 questions this week. Okay. So all 13 questions need to be done and turned in by Sunday. And we'll be going through document by document throughout the week. Okay. So you guys can always tune in. Okay. And I'll be going through them with you guys. If you have extra questions, okay, always feel free to ask them here, ask them via email, ask them on Google Classroom. Okay. And I'll help you out as best I can. Yeah. So you should be working on that all week. All right. Remember, today you also have your president's tests. You've known about that since probably with the first week of the semester, way back in January. Okay, so that is on your Google Classroom already. Okay, make sure you are filling out that form. Make sure you're doing it on your own. Make sure you don't have any other tabs open, right? Trusting you guys, okay, do your best. I'll get those inputted as soon as I can. Your Reconstruction packet from last week should have been turned in yesterday. Okay, so make sure that if you haven't turned that in, you are getting it in. Also, your record of our times, right? The journal you've been keeping throughout this whole process is due next week. Okay, so make sure you're up to date on that and you're ready to turn that in. Okay. Lastly, you guys should have gotten all your feedback from Portfolio. Okay, everyone who turned something in should have gotten feedback. Okay, if you never turned in the initial essay, okay, you will be hearing from Mr. Anderson on Portfolio, so keeping up on that work. Okay, we only have a few weeks left. We have less than a month until the end of the school year. Okay, so I know things are still different. They're still challenging, but make sure we're doing our best, putting that work in, reaching out when you need something. Okay, I'm always here. Your other teachers are here, right? We still have our counselor, right, at the office, all doing their best work for you guys. Okay, so make sure you're reaching out to us if you help. Okay, reaching out to your family, your friends. Okay, to stay in touch with each other, maintain that connection. Okay, and assistance to anyone that needs it. Okay. Oh, and very last thing, you guys should have gotten a post on your house Google Classroom about photos or videos of you, your friends, okay, things like that, to put together for an 8th grade promotion video. Okay, so obviously we don't have promotion like normal this year, but we are trying to put together something for you guys. Okay, so any pictures of yourself this year, or if you were at the say last year, the year before as well, okay, please send those to Ms. Rosales, okay, and we'll be putting that together. Okay. Any last questions on any of those things or on Reconstruction that we were talking about in today's video? Okay. Any thoughts, questions, okay, issues that we are having? Okay. Again, always feel free to reach out if you need something. Okay. Have a good Memorial Day. Okay. Stay well, you guys. And I will talk to you later. Okay. Again, we'll have this video up on our channel and we'll have a new video to look at black codes tomorrow. All right. Goodbye, you guys. Oh, sorry. Let's see. Next Monday, your record of our times will be due. Okay. So that's the journal you've been keeping up. Okay. That is what will be due for you for history for next Monday. Your portfolio, the final draft of your essay or the video you're doing, whichever version you're doing, is due no later than the 22nd. Okay, so that should be next Friday. Okay. The packet you're working on this week for Reconstruction is due on Sunday. Hopefully that answered your question. And yeah, I will see you guys later. All right, be well.